Welcome to Communicate Now, where we talk about all things related to effective communication skills, everything from sales to negotiation, leadership, networking, and my personal favorite, how to win friends and influence people. Today, we have a special guest, Darren Jones. He's a digital creator, remote sales professional, a cold calling expert. He's been in sales for only 1 year and yet has improved at an incredible rate. He has a YouTube channel called The Renegade, where he talks about fitness and mindset. And he also has future endeavors in the entrepreneurial area of remote sales. Now, Darren, so glad to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good, good. We spoke a little while ago, and during our conversation, I realized that you had a lot of interesting things to say regarding communication. And we were just talking about cold calling on a networking call. And as soon as I heard it, I realized, you know what? I want to bring this guy on my show because he's got a lot to say, especially about cold calling, intercultural communication, intergenerational communication, and adapting to the people you're speaking with. So I'm glad to have you here, and let's get started.
All right.
So regarding cold calling, so what is your philosophy when it comes to your sales strategy when you're doing cold calls?
All right. So when we're talking about cold calls, I like to kind of split cold calls into, I guess, two different types. The first cold call, obviously like ice cold, like they don't know you, they don't know your company, like they don't know anything at all. And then we have like kind of cold outbound calls that are like leads that are like maybe like, 1, 2, 3 years old, maybe.
Mhm.
And those are also kind of in the cold calling range because they may have forgot your company. And so, in that aspect, it's kind of like, I guess ice cold calling, but it's slightly different. And it's like I want to cover the two because it's like now in my sales career, it's like I've had experience doing both.
Yeah, that's great. And
Yeah, so when it
go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So when it comes to like to cold call, like ice cold calling, where like they don't even know you, honestly, I feel like the biggest thing is just, I mean, for one, volume. Because I mean, with cold calling, like in general, like it's just gonna be like a numbers game, like as far as getting people to pick up, getting people to, stay on the phone. But something else too is honestly just finding an intro that gets straight to the point. Um, but also at the same time sounding human because like a lot of the times when people do cold calls and even me when I was first starting, you can sound really robotic, really stiff, like, hey, my name is Darren with XYZ company, I'm calling because of ABC. And it sounds super monotone, versus hey, is this Steven? And then they'd be like, yeah, yeah, this is Steven. Yeah, this is Darren. I'm just calling with, XYZ company. I noticed XYZ, or I'm calling because of XYZ, and then just kind of go from there. It's just more of a kind of like human response instead of just, having like a bunch of lines and then it's just robotic and then.
And there's one thing I noticed during that demonstration, that example that you gave. The first
Mhm,
example sounded very robotic. The
mhm.
second example, the content was very similar, but your tone changed. And so now I
Mhm.
understand what you mean about coming across as being human instead of a robot. Can you kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
elaborate on how you prepare yourself beforehand to kind of come across as really genuine, authentic, and human?
What I like to do beforehand is I mean, like I honestly really just in my mind as I'm about to call this person, like I really just like to think of them just as they are, just like an actual person. It's like I'll be, like if I'm doing calls on my phone, it's like I'll be staring at my phone and I'll be like staring at them and I'm like, oh, like I'm about to call John or I'm about to call Matt, like I'm calling like an actual person. And so it's like in my mind, like I'm framing it like if I knew someone named John or if I was sitting across from someone named Matt, how would I act? How would I be? How would my voice sound? If I was just reaching back out to someone, let's just say hypothetically, it's like we're gonna set that framework up in my, brain, how would I sound? I'd be like, hey Matt, how are you doing today? Or, hey Matt, this is Darren with XYZ company. How are you? versus, hey, Matt, this is Darren with XYZ company. How are you today?
Yeah.
Which, sounds very, somebody picks up the phone, they're going to be like, I tell a marketer like a scam call, click.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
it's like
I
I
get,
really just try to just, be relaxed and, just speak with my emotions.
yeah. And whenever I speak with salesmen, and of course, I'm a salesman myself, and I just started doing cold calls, and I had called you up and asked for advice. I think you will hear that cold calling is the one thing that everyone is either terrified of or just wants to avoid completely. And now, how do you think that someone starting out or someone that's having a lot of difficulty with it, how do you think they can change their approach so that they don't generate so much sales resistance with the people that they're calling?
So honestly, what was going to need to happen and I mean honestly like there isn't like a special answer is that like volume, man. Because like for me when I first started, man, I mean so many people could have told me so many things, but when it came down to it, I had to get hung up on a lot. I had to get hung up on a lot. I had to deal with, sounding, uncertain or, sounding timid and, I had to deal with stuttering, had to deal with, being nervous. I remember I was, just in general, just like with sales in general, like when I was first starting out, I remember it's like my heart would beat so fast, like while the phone was ringing, like during like the ringing tone, like I would just be so nervous. And I mean, it just took having to do it just over and over and over again until it just kind of became like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm just calling a lead right now. I'm just calling someone right now, like, no big deal.
Yeah,
And it just takes volume. Like it takes volume and it takes having confidence in yourself. And the only way you can build that confidence in yourself is when you do something over and over and over again. And it's like when you get to the point to where it's like you kind of develop almost like an indifference because it's like you've got hung up on so many times and you've had, so many bad sales interactions. It's like you'll get to a point where it's like, okay, like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, what, they're going to hang up on me again? Like, I'm going to get hung up on? Or, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? It's like, I've already got hung up on, 1,000 times. What's 1,001? And then once you develop that attitude, then all of a sudden the nervousness goes down, like the neediness tone goes down. And then it's like you can just kind of just be more human. And it's like when people notice that over the phone, when you stop sounding so robotic or nervous or needy, which is what a lot of people sound like when they're first, starting to do sales and cold calls, when that finally goes away and you just sound like an ordinary person, just having a conversation, then you'll notice, people will start to, stay on a little bit longer.
yeah. And I just had a lady on this podcast. Her name was Princess, and she had a quote, and it sounds great. She said, "On the other side of discomfort is everything in the world that you could possibly want." And I just think that making cold call after cold call, getting hung up over and over again, and yet that one booked appointment that I made makes me so proud of myself. So I would
Mm-hmm.
encourage everyone that's doing cold calls right now, or even if they're warm leads, every no leads closer to a yes. I'm sure you've heard that before. And I also want to ask, do you have any influence from Jeremy Minor in your education?
A little bit. I've watched some of his content and also my current the current offer that I'm on is actually doing training from him. Like they bought a course from him. And yeah, I mean his training has influenced me a little bit as far as just being laid back. Um, Not so much because like in his training, he talks a lot about, kind of being an actor and,
Yeah.
using this tonality and using that tonality. And my thing when it comes to that is you don't really need to use these quote unquote tonalities unless you're being disingenuous. Like when you're being like genuine in your interactions, like you're gonna naturally have the right tonality. Like when you set up the right frame in your mind and you're genuine during your sales calls, like say for example, he likes to talk about using a confused tone when you're on the
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
Like sound confused during the intro. But like, here's the thing, like when you create the frame of like wanting to seek information or wanting to get to the truth during a sales call, you're already going to have a naturally curious or confused tone anyway. Like if me and you were talking and I'm wanting to find something out or I'm wanting to understand how I can help you and I'm being genuine about it, I'm not going to need to be like, oh, let me use my curious or confused tone to see if I can help them. Like like my tone is already going to sound that way because like I'm genuinely want to do something. And I feel like if people just let go of this whole thing in sales is, thinking of prospects as just like objects. Like if
Yeah.
people thought of prospects as people and like they just switched their mindset, from, oh, like I need to call this prospect this object, and you know and they just thought like, oh, like this is like an actual person, you know then things would get a lot easier, and then their tonality would, naturally come out more.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I wanted to talk a bit about personal branding. Personal branding is so important in this day and age, and I speak to a lot of people about it. I suggest to them that start your personal brand now, even if you're nervous, just get it out right now, and it's going to build up over time, and it's going to open up opportunities for you. I'm sure you understand that as well because you focus on personal branding. So you have your own YouTube channel.
Mhm.
What made you decide to get into the fitness and lifestyle niche for your YouTube channel?
Well, when I was before I got into this space, actually, before I got to remote sales, I actually wanted to just be a content creator. Like I just wanted just to, build up my audience and just, leverage it to, have my own offers and to, monetize my following. However, though, for a lot of people, and this is kind of like, I feel like a lie that gets purported in the content creation space is this lie that you can like gain like 1 million followers or like hundreds of thousands of followers in like, 30 to 60, 90 days if you do these tactics or these tricks or these
Yeah,
hacks. And all of that is just misleading. It's a lie. You're not gonna, the chances of you getting those many followers in that amount of time are so low, like you might as well just be gambling or playing the lottery.
yeah,
And I ended up figuring that out because even on not YouTube, but on Instagram, like especially, I was posting like 3 times a day for like 3, 4 months, like two, three
yeah.
times a day. And doing that, I don't regret doing that. Um, it's kind of lagging a little bit. Are you able to hear me? It's kind of
Yeah,
like
I am
lagging.
able to hear you. It's a little bit choppy, but I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Yeah, I just noticed this from looking at the screen that it looked laggy. So I just
Oh,
want to
it's
stop
fine.
it.
We can hear you just fine.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So back to what I was saying though, when I was creating that content and when I was posting 2 to 3 times a day, um, I ended up figuring out that, even though I was growing a little bit, it was much slower than, I thought it was going to be. And because of that, um, I ended up having to get to remote sales so that way I could make a living while still doing what I wanted to do, which was slowly building my personal brand. And it's like I chose fitness and mindset because originally I was just into working out and stuff like that. But as I was trying to grow my following, it's like I started to realize there was a lot more things in play, besides, fitness, that can make someone, successful. It's also your mind. It's like the mind and body are, connected. It's like as cliche as it sounds because everybody says it, it's like I really don't feel like a lot of people understand it, like truly understand it. If the mind isn't right and your body can't be, at its full potential. If your body isn't right, if your body isn't healthy, then you're always going to be like limited in your mind.
That's right. And I mean, it's not just a theory. That's scientific fact. I mean, the
Yeah.
nervous system in our body, especially right around our spine, connects our thoughts with our body. That's what our thoughts are what make our body move. And so it makes sense that our current mindset, our motivation, our determination, and all of that is going to determine what we're capable of doing with our body. Now, I think a lot of people may not understand that. Would you like to go a little bit deeper into that? Because that's definitely a part of motivation, determination, and just continually improving on yourself. How do you believe that the mind is interconnected with the body? Can you give me an example of that, maybe in your own life?
Yeah, so I mean, just to give an example in my own life, even though I'm young, like I'm 22,
Mhm.
I've experienced a lot of like pains as far as like nerve issues, like in my hip and my back, to the point to where like almost 2 years ago, I had to lay out of my job for about 2 months because of how much pain I was in.
Oh boy.
I was having nerve pain in my groin, like in my hip area, like in the hip joint, like it felt like somebody was just stabbing my hip joint. Like that's what
Yeah.
it felt like. Every time I took a step, every time I bore a weight on my leg, like it's just immediate pain. And during that time period when I couldn't work out, um, I mean, it took a toll on my mind. It's like I had to try really hard to keep myself in a positive mind frame. And the same can apply. I mean, even if somebody, who isn't dealing with like an injury, like say someone is unhealthy, right? Say
Yeah.
someone is overweight, because they're overweight, their mind's going to be groggy, they're going to be slow to move, it's just you're not as quick, you're not as sharp. And so it's like when your body isn't as quick or as sharp, when you aren't able to live normally or to perform everyday activities, the right way, it's going to limit your mind. Like I mean, sure, you can still use your mind, right? But I mean, your attitude towards everything is going to be skewed. It's like you're going to have more of a, kind of down in the gutter mindset depending on, how strong your willpower is. Not everybody, can have the strength to, not fall into a depression and to, just give up on everything. And during that time frame, I remember when I couldn't work for months. I actually picked up writing. I would actually like write content. Like I stopped doing as much video content and I just focused on writing because it's like in my mind, like I was like, even though I can't be productive with my body, I can't film videos, I can't work out, I can still use my mind. And it's just, but even though I was still using my mind, I know that if I would have been 100% with my body, that I mean, I would have been so much better, so.
And something that you said there reminded me of a motivational speaker, very popular motivational speaker since I think the 1980s, maybe 1970s, Lee Brown. And
Lee Brown?
he said the real challenge, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, comes when you get knocked down, right? And if you're able to pull yourself out of that, and that relates to sales too, because sometimes the feeling of
Mm,
defeat and rejection is really harsh.
it
But
is.
I
It
really
is.
think that, sales, networking, communication, leadership, all of that stuff is so interconnected with our personal development as a person, our personal development. And I think it's great though that we can show our progress in our personal branding because people will come in and cheer us on, which is a really awesome thing
Yeah.
to have great people around us.
And something too, like just you saying that, like, like letting people kind of see the journey too. Something that I want to touch on too, because this can kind of be a hang up for some people when they're building their personal brand,
Yeah.
is knowing how to properly document that. Because, let's just like give two like different examples, right? Say someone posts something like say they're having issues with, making money or they're defaulting on their bills or something, and they're having like financial hardships, right? You have one person that posts about it, and people are sympathetic, they're cheering them on, and all that good stuff. You have another person that posts about it, and everyone is doing the whole oh you're being a victim, and they're hating on them, and all this other sort of stuff, because we see it all the time whenever people post.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you'll see people be vulnerable online and it'll get kind of good engagement, and other times it'll get negative engagement.
Yeah.
And something that I've noticed, because I do this, like sometimes I'm vulnerable online, And the way that I'm able to be vulnerable and to document my journey is through doing it through a certain frame. It's like whenever you're going to talk about, like when you're personal branding, like on your personal page, and you want to talk about a loss or a hardship that you're going through, you always want to make sure that you're talking about it from the mindset of wanting to improve.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, when they talk about their hardships or things that they're going through online on their pages, a lot of people sometimes make the mistake of coming at it from a victim type frame, and they're wanting to just basically vent. And
Yeah.
that is something that's a big no-no. Like never vent and never play the victim card online. You
Yeah.
always want to like let's say this, for example, right? Let's say you're a new salesperson, you've gone 2 months, you haven't made a sale. You could either post about that online, and you could be like, oh, it's so unfair. Everybody else on the team is making sales. I'm not making any sales. Life sucks. I'm depressed. I'm this, I'm that. Or you could say, I haven't made a sale in, 2 months. I've been feeling really bad about it. And I've been doing A, B, and C in my sales process.
Yes.
And, and it hasn't been giving me any results. Does anybody know anything I can do differently than A, B, and C to help me get X, Y, and Z result?
Yeah.
You see how that's a different frame? I'm being vulnerable. I'm saying, hey, I'm not doing good right now, right? I'm kind of feeling bad, but hey, this is what I'm doing right now that's getting me this result. Is there anything I can do to give me a different result? Anything I can do to win? When you come at your personal journey and your personal journey from that perspective, and you're wanting to be vulnerable, you're wanting to be genuine, and you come at it from that perspective, not only will it garner people's respect, but you'll also be helped faster and quicker. And this is something that I've really mastered and learned how to do because I've seen other people do it wrong. I've seen other people just complain or just kind of just have the, woe is me mindset. And when that happens, the responses are never good. People
Yeah.
lose respect for you. The opposite thing happens. And so it's like I feel like it's really important for people who are building their personal brands, who are wanting to be genuine, to learn how to do that.
Because there's a big
I'm not
difference.
sure if you know what I mean or if you've had that experience.
Oh, I do know what you
Mm-hmm.
mean, and I'll comment on that. There's a big difference between being vulnerable and self-pity. And a person may
Yes.
be vulnerable, and they're continually working on themselves, but they may not know how to word their posts correctly, and it will come off
Yes.
as being looking for
Mm-hmm.
attention. And then you start getting negative
Yes.
responses, and you're thinking, man, I'm working so hard on myself. Why are people shooting me
Mm-hmm.
down? So I think the way that
Mm-hmm.
you portray yourself and the way that you write and the way that you communicate in your posts is very important.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say talk about your vulnerabilities or what you're having difficulty with, and you could ask people, how could I fix this? Or you could just say, but
Mm-hmm.
this is what I'm doing to get myself over this hurdle. And so that's
Yes. Yes.
inspirational. Then people are
Mm-hmm.
thinking, oh yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
experienced that as well. And I just gave up. But take a look at
Mm-hmm.
this guy. I mean, he's doing whatever he can to get over that hump. And so it gives people inspiration and they look up to you, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something that I've gotten really good about doing because like something that I really like to do is like I really like to inspire people. I like to motivate people. Even outside of just doing personal branding, for remote sales, I also just like doing personal branding and posting because I like to inspire people. I like to talk about things that I struggled with and how I overcame that. And I like to be vulnerable and I like to do that so that way other people who are in similar situations can, feel inspired. So that way, they don't give up either. You
Yeah.
take me, I remember when I was like 8, 9 years old, man, I had a horrible, horrible stutter. And I remember my mom, she used to torture me. She used to make me at the time when I was like really bad at stuttering, she used to make me do call-in orders for like Chinese food and pizza. And she would
Oh
make me
boy.
talk on the phone. And oh my God, it would take like 20 minutes to like get out a simple order from me. Like that's how bad my speech was. And it was like that for a lot of years. For a lot of years, I was a horrible stutterer. Like I was always really nervous to talk on the phone, just to talk in general. And it's like I never let that um, discourage me. You know, it's like here I am now. I'm literally in the profession that requires the best speech and the best communication. And I'm coming from a background of being some timid, shy kid, you know, who couldn't even say their own name. Like, I would stutter saying my own name sometimes. Like people would ask me my name and like I wouldn't be able to even say it for like 10,
Yeah.
15 seconds. And so it's just kind of, you know, it's like I want people to know, you know, it's like you don't have to be, you know, your weaknesses. Like you don't have to stay where you are. Like you can change. Like as long as you have that willpower in you, it's like you can do anything. And it's like that's why I like to be vulnerable. That's why I like to share it because I like to to let people know they can do that, and I want people to do that.
Hey man, this is part of the reason because we only spoke for about 10 minutes or so, but I realized that I wanted to bring you on this podcast because I like to bring people on that really want to help and inspire people. And so I realized right away that I should bring you on. So I really appreciate that. And a lot of people watching this will appreciate that as well. And even if there's 200 people watching it, but only one person becomes inspired, you've still done your job because it's going to make a
That's
big
the way.
impact in their life and they can use that inspiration and pay it forward to another person. And it's almost like you create your own legacy of inspiration and you're helping people. And that gives a feeling of fulfillment. I really think it does. Now, you also spoke about versatile communication. So you had said something interesting last time. It was about how you manage to change the way you communicate depending on the person you're speaking to. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so to tell you a little bit more about that, to kind of give you like a little bit of my background personally.
Yeah,
So I come from a mixed family. Like my dad, like he's half white, half black. My mom, she's half white, half black. And so my like extended family, like I have so many different types of people in my family. You know,
yeah,
I have, you know, white people who are Trump supporters. I have black people who are Biden supporters.
yeah,
I have the entire spectrum. And so it's like my whole life, I've seen so many different types of perspectives.
yeah,
And so, um, with that being said, because of that, because I've seen so many different perspectives, because I've been friends with and I've known so many family members with so many different types of political views and cultural views, it's really helped me to be able to be very not just even in sales, but even just outside of sales with like making friends. It's like I'm able to adapt to who I'm talking to so easily. It's like I can talk to a 50-year-old who's like conservative and who like, you know, is a hardcore Trump supporter. And then I can go talk to somebody who's like, you know, 20, 30 years old, who's, you know, maybe a little bit more liberal and who's like, you know, pro-choice or something.
yeah.
Right. And it's like I can have great conversations with both types of people. And it's like not a lot of people can do that. Like not a lot of people,
No,
especially in this day and age, can go from, you know, talking to, especially with politics, you know, going from talking to someone who's conservative to talking to someone who's more liberal minded. But it's like I can do both. And it's like I see both perspectives. And it's like because of that, I can easily switch my tonality, the way I talk, the things that I talk about, I can easily switch that depending on who I'm talking to.
yeah. And I mean, you sound like a people person. And it's tough. You have to learn how to reserve to not be judgmental right off the bat
Mhm.
and kind of have
Yeah,
an
you do.
interest in the person and get to understand them instead of just saying, well, that person,
Just write
he's
them
not a
off.
part of my tribe, so I'm not going to
Mhm.
associate with them. But I think when you're able to be versatile enough to speak with so many different types of people, it will improve your life. And you can improve the lives of others as well. It's interesting that you said that the diversity in race that you had in your family. My father is Jamaican, my mother is Canadian, so black and white. So I had the
Oh,
exact same
okay.
things in my family reunions. We had these huge family reunions uh, up in Canada.
Mhm.
But that's what I grew up around. And it was so great. And of course, they were on all different sides of the political aisle. Canadian and
Hmm.
American politics are quite different. But it was such
Hmm.
a great experience to have that growing up because I think I was able to develop a versatility with the people I talk to. So I do understand what you're talking about there. Yeah,
And I feel
and
like it's an advantage, of making friends. Like I made so many friends who've like had, so many like different types of views and like so many different types of things. And like they never would have thought, like they always tell me like, oh, like I never would have thought you would have been into this, or I never would have thought you would have understood that. And it's like I've always managed to make friends because of that, just in general, because it's like I'm just good at like understanding. Like even if I don't personally agree with it, it's like I can understand where they're coming from, and it's like I can agree to disagree. It's like I can disagree with them,
yeah,
but I can still like them like as a person, and I can still be friends with them.
yeah. It's great to be able to do that. I think that I would say that the pinnacle of how to win friends and influence people, the pinnacle of the skill set is to be able to turn someone that dislikes and disagrees with you into not to your point of view, just
Mhm.
simply to appreciate you for listening to them.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that you need to change or you need to win an argument. Just
Mhm.
simply turn someone that believes that they are my enemy or believes that I am their enemy into my friend and do that in an authentic and genuine way, I think is
Mhm.
one of the greatest skill sets you could ever learn. And that's something that we have to do in sales all the time. On a cold
Oh
call,
yeah.
you have to do that within 10 seconds. And if you have
Mhm.
that capability, you can do a lot of things. You can move mountains. And one thing I just want to ask you before we wrap this up. There's a lot of people watching this video that are going to be, within their first few years in the remote sales community, or maybe they're getting into entrepreneurship. They're just starting. Maybe they're a little bit worried, concerned about stepping out of their comfort zone. Getting into sales can be a bit tough in the beginning, the rejection. Do you have any words of encouragement for those people that can kind of help motivate them and get them more determined and more inspired?
I just want to say this, man. I mean, I mean, anybody can do it. I mean, I don't come from a lot, man. Like I really don't. Like, I'll tell you this. One of the main reasons why I got to remote sales in the first place was because I didn't have a car. And I have a car, and at time I was just walking to my job.
Yeah,
And there came a day, because that time I was working at Walmart, when I finally made a decision, like, hey, like I need to do something else. Like I can't do this anymore.
yeah,
And I remember I was thinking, I was like, I don't have a car, so I can't just drive to another job. Like I can't just get a decent paying, let's say, for example, construction job. It's like it's like I'm gridlocked by, how far I can walk.
yeah,
And so I was like, well, what can I do? And I was like, I have a phone, I have a laptop, I'm blessed enough to have a home. What can I do with the internet connection, a phone, and a laptop? Right. And I just start doing research. It's like you're taking, like I'm somebody like I'm that guy who you probably seen, or like one of those guys who you seen like walking on the side of the road, man, with groceries.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like I ain't nothing special. Like I know a lot of people, they look at me, for my personal brand, and they see, the small success that I've had, and they view me as this high status person, or
hmm,
as this super expert. But like I'm just somebody like I just refuse to give up. Like I've always held on to the dream of wanting to create wealth like for myself. And it's like no matter what my situation has been, it's like I've always held on to that, and I've always aspired to be better, every day. And it's like I want people to know who are just getting into this space who don't have a lot either, that it doesn't matter. Like as long as you have that heart and that willingness to get better, to learn from people, to network, to genuinely improve. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter how many times you stutter on the phone, especially people who stutter.
hmm,
People who stutter, who get really nervous. It doesn't matter. Just keep doing it. Make 1,000 calls. Get hung up 1,000 times. I know just saying that it's easier said than done. But once you do that, it's like the mental fortitude that you build for yourself when you finally have that one call where it's like you're calm and collected, and all of a sudden the stutter goes away. It's like, dude, like it's only up from there. And that's what
yeah,
I would say to people who are just starting out, or to people who are struggling, and people who may have like communication issues.
That's awesome. I'm really glad that you know, said that for the audience here. I think it's going to be really helpful. And I personally think, I think that your personal brand is going to inspire a lot of people, and I hope it really grows. And I hope people watching this video go over to check out his YouTube channel called The Renegade, and just, you know, friend him on Facebook, Darren Jones. You know, it's always great to increase the quality of your network. I always say it's quality over quantity. And so I
Yes.
think Darren's one of those guys that you should get in touch with. And I think we're just going to wrap up the interview here. I think it was great. There was a lot of information, motivation. You're very determined. You're very inspiring. And man, I hope we stay friends for a long time, man.
We will, man. We will, man. Just stay in contact with me and like I actually like I'll shoot you over my number like after this so that way you
Yeah,
can call me because like that's honestly like a better way to reach me is just to call me.
perfect.
Just simply because like my messages because of what I'm doing, it's like it's just constant. I'll have like 10 more DMs in like 2 hours,
Yeah,
from
yeah,
sending out to people and then from responding. So it's like
yeah.
just so you can stay in contact with me personally. I'm just gonna
Perfect,
shoot you my number.
perfect, perfect. Yeah, so we'll just wrap this up. We'll just wave goodbye to the audience. This was another great episode. I loved it. And I'll see you guys later.
All right, see y'all.